Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are here with a very special guest and one of our featured speakers, Kedarji, who is the founder of the Bhakta School of Transformation. I always find that so hard to say, but this is an amazing facility, and we are going to learn about his Ecology of Well-Being. So the title of this lecture is The Ecology of Well-Being and Kedarji's 4 Pillars of Joy in Daily Living. So I'm very excited to hear this. Welcome to the Weiner Wellness Virtual Summit. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and the Bhakta School of Transformation? We'd love to hear.
I established the Bhakta School out of my own journey, a spiritual journey first and foremost, and then my well-being journey, which happened over a period of many, many years. But to give a short laser version, growing up, I was very sick. I had multiple chronic health conditions and diseases, for which I was given prognoses that involved the removal of my liver, the removal of one of my kidneys. I had pneumonia in the left lung. They wanted to remove my lung because they said that was the only possibility for me to stay alive. So things like this. And then I crossed paths with Michio Kushi by way of George Oshawa when they first came to the US in New York City. And then subsequently studied at the Kushi Institute, graduated from the Kushi Institute with degrees in Oriental medicine, Eastern medicine, acupuncture, acupressure, and hands-on healing. And then subsequent to that, took a journey through India where I found my spiritual master, and that really sewed up my entire journey and helped me integrate everything else that I had learned. So I healed myself from several really severe diseases that I was dying from, including early onset diabetes.
Wow.
With the methods that I now teach. And then I had many other issues connected to my spiritual growth that I really worked on with the great leadership that I had with my mentor. And so I've taken all that and put it into a curriculum under the banner of the Bhakta School. And we're now building a new platform that we hope to have a wider audience. It's going to start up in September, the Holistic Living Network, where we'll be providing this curriculum as well as a platform for many other resources. So this is all a result of my own journey. Bhakta School has been engaged for 15 years. We have many case studies and surveys that we've done in 15 years and some clinical trials that show the effectiveness of everything that we offer. And it's just been a great joy for me to be able to take what I've experienced in my journey and to share it with so many others over these years.
Well, that's quite an overcoming. I mean, and I don't think people put enough emphasis on the spiritual wellness as we approach health. We are very physically associated society where we just look at repression and suppression of symptoms rather than getting to the root. So I really love how this concept is working out. So what is the ecology of well-being? What are we talking about today?
The ecology of well-being is a frame that I've been using for almost 40 years that I find really helps people to focus on what matters in the well-being journey. I chose the word ecology because what I've observed in so many years is that when people think of ecology, they typically think of things like tropical rainforest, for example. So if we take the Amazon jungle, right, in its natural, pristine form, it's teeming with life, millions of species. Still today, tropical rainforests are sources for the foundational elements for most pharmaceutical medications, many vitamin supplements, many herbal supplements. The foundations still come from these rainforests. But the beauty of the rainforest is that they have an ecology that functions in a harmonious and delicate balance. Harmonious and delicate balance. And so I use that term so that people understand that with respect to well-being, it's just like sustaining a tropical rainforest where there must be a harmonious and delicate balance that's maintained as the journey is made. And that has two focuses. The first is harmonious. The second is being able to get to the root cause. And so that's why I framed it in this phrase, ecology of well-being, just so that people from the very start have an understanding of what the journey is about.
Wow, that's such a great analogy. I love that it's harmonious and delicate. That's, it's very poignant. So the four pillars, tell me a little bit about each of those. What are the four pillars?
So the four pillars are the wheels of the ecology of well-being, and I'll go through each one. But before starting, I want to say, to make sure that everyone understands the premise for the four pillars, this entire realm that we live in was brought into being out of joy, out of sheer delight. This God power, this God nature that created the universe of all the worlds is full of this joy, full of this delight. And whether you like the term God or Yahweh, or you use Jesus the Christ or Muhammad, once you begin to have a direct experience of this highest power that is the energy substratum of everything here, then the labels begin to become irrelevant. So there is this power. We live on a planet that hangs in a void of space without anything material with which to hold it there, spinning on an axis in an orbit around a fireball. And it happens in such an orderly fashion that we can pin 24 hours in a day on one rotation of the Earth's axis back and forth. We can pin 365 days in a year on one rotation of the Earth around the sun. We can make accurate predictions about the waxing and the waning of the moon. And no president, no army, no sovereign wealth trust, no nation, no drug cartel, no one and nothing has the power to manipulate, alter, or change the fact that we live on this rock that hangs in a void of space, spinning on an axis in an orbit around a fireball. So there is a sacred law here. And where, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi ji, where there is law, there is always a lawgiver. Whether you call that lawgiver God or universal consciousness or Yahweh, really doesn't matter so much as recognizing that there is a highest power, an energy substratum of everything. And we are energetic beings, and we are the microcosm of that power, embodied in form. So if we start with that understanding, then it becomes really easy to get the four pillars. But joy and matter are connected indelibly. This is even said in quantum physics. Joy and matter are connected by way of joy in matter. So that brings me to the first pillar, the spiritual power. This is the first pillar. This is the recognition that there is an energy substratum of everything that is contained within us that we rely on, because everything we do here in our daily mundane lives requires power. We need power to see, to think, to hear, to taste, to smell, to go about our daily mundane activities. And the truth is, upon close examination inwardly with spiritual methods, we find that there is one power source that drives everything here. And so the spiritual power, this first pillar, we teach methods for people to begin to have their own direct experience of this fact on an ongoing basis, and then to learn how to harness this power for well-being in all the areas of their lives. So that's pillar number one. Pillar number two is improved mental state. Improved mental state is so necessary because the mind is an energy of this, I'll call it divine consciousness, this highest power that is contained within each and every one of us. The mind is an energy of that consciousness. That's why the mind has so much power. So the first step in well-being and also in vibrant health, because the state of the mind impacts epigenetic communication at the cellular level as well, is that we have to have addressed the restless mind. The mind is so restless. So we have to have methods to silence the restless mind. In doing so, our students find that they get more available mental energy, that their minds become sharper while the mind becomes quieter, and then the mind can be turned toward this power source, this spiritual power, to become even more magnified in such a way that well-being can be attained and secured. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is emotional resilience. And what I've found in almost 40 years of doing this is that most people ride the emotional roller coaster. And so emotions, when out of control, of course, also impact everything all the way down to the cellular level. So we are blessed with this gift of humanity. And while embodied, we must express our humanity. So the question is, how can we do that? Because connected to the expression of humanity are the emotions. How can we express our humanity without becoming slaves to our emotions? So this is what this third pillar, emotional resilience, addresses. And we have time-honored methods that we've been using to do so. And then the fourth is vibrant health. First premise of vibrant health, that fourth pillar, is this: the body is the temple in which God resides. We dwell in a biological spacesuit, so to speak. And just like the people we send up into space, that spacesuit has to be functioning optimally for them to exist in space, right? It has to be functioning optimally. There can't be any issues. The spacesuit has to be maintained. And so we dwell in this biological spacesuit, so to speak, the temple of the highest, which must be maintained optimally to secure our well-being while we're in this form, in this earth realm. So those are the four pillars. And the last three are integrated into the first, by the way, because again, we need power for everything we do.
Right. So you have to have a base knowledge of understanding that, you know, there is God, and then moving on from there.
To experience, right? Moving to experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So how can these be understood and applied, like in the context of attaining that state of well-being? Like, how do you make them applicable in lifestyle so that you can have vibrant health?
So let me go pillar by pillar.
Okay.
I'll give a laser version now because I know that our time is short here. But first pillar, the spiritual power, and I can even do a demonstration if we have 3 minutes, but we have methods for making the restless mind quiet that also increase available mental energy and sharpen the power of the mind. And so the first step in application of the spiritual power is to utilize methods such as methods for meditation, mantra yoga that we teach, chanting, which is a powerful method to quiet the restless mind, to turn the mind within, to cease it from wandering around, and to direct it to that highest power source from which it can gain a much greater function. And so that's primarily done by application of methods for increasing spiritual experience by going inside, by going to where that power dwells within us naturally as our natural free state of being, our God nature. And then improved mental state, the second pillar, the application of which is, again, to get people to understand and embrace wisdom and methods for actually making the mind silent when it's not necessary to be performing tasks. So there are 3 principles connected to that we begin with for the application of the second pillar. First, the mind loves the places it frequents the most. This is a point of wisdom and understanding that's very, very important, because first it infers that we have the power to rein in our wandering mind. We have the power to decide by our power where we allow our minds to go. And so if we consistently on a regular basis turn the mind within to that highest power source, over time, the mind is going to begin loving to go there. It's going to love to frequent that place because the mind loves the places it frequents the most. So we've got to retrain our mind to go to that sacred space, which is actually beyond the mind and beyond the senses. It's the witness to the mind. This is a spiritual witnessing awareness that when we allow our minds and train our minds to become established in, we can really harness that spiritual power. The second principle on which improved mental state is founded as part of application is that you get what you meditate on. You get what you meditate on is very important to understand, because if you meditate on lemons, you're not going to get mangoes. and if you meditate on reverie, a nice time at the beach, or having dinner with friends in a restaurant, you're not going to experience the indescribable joy of the self. That joy comes from meditating on joy. And so you get what you meditate on is a very important principle that we apply as part of that second pillar. And then the third is you become what you obey. You become what you obey. We become what we obey. So we have people, for example, who come and they want to lose weight. They're morbidly obese. and we put them on a program, and we slowly wean them. But first, when they start, once they go home, they can't stop thinking about the cheesecake that we just told them that they have to wean themselves off of. And as it turns out, they finally get it. They've been meditating on cheesecake, on food, on things that are not good for their cells for so long that they have become that. One of the most profound things about my transformation is applying this principle, you become what you obey, because when I integrated these 4 pillars into my own journey, over time, I have become these pillars. And that's really the essence of all journeys. It's to become what you're journeying to in this sense. And so improved mental state, that's the application of that. This is just first steps. Emotional resilience. So emotional resilience begins with the understanding that understandings that we reach for and embrace always dictate how we feel in the moment and the subsequent emotions that are triggered as a result. Therefore, if we want to change and get off the emotional roller coaster, we have to first examine the understandings that we've embraced for all of our lives. Many of those understandings we got from our parents, from authority figures in school, out of peer pressure, from popular media, from accepting understandings of celebrities that we've come to love. And so in the journey of well-being, this arc, we call it the principle of the arc. Understandings dictate feelings that trigger emotions. That dictates how we're vibrating in the moment, meaning what we're putting out, projecting into our daily situations and circumstances. And that dictates what we attract into those daily situations and circumstances. So that's the principle of the arc that we begin to apply with emotional resilience. It begins with changing the understandings we reach for. So on the well-being journey, the first step we take with people with respect to this particular pillar is we lead them through simple methods for examining all the understandings that they reached for and embraced that are no longer useful for the direction in which they're headed. So for example, for me, my mother grew up in the civil rights movement. She grew up experiencing a great deal of racism. And growing up, she told me, look, no matter how hard you work, no matter how intelligent you become, you'll never be given the same opportunities as white people. And you're just going to have to accept that. Now, that's an understanding, but that's the understanding that one of many that my mother gave me that I had to re-examine. And when I met my spiritual master, he insisted that I re-examine that particular understanding. He said, if you really embrace the understanding that you don't have a chance, that you're an underdog, that you're always limited, that you're always bound, you'll never be able to make the journey. So I had to discard that understanding, amongst many, many others. Okay. So that's emotional resilience, the application of. And then vibrant health, first step is get to the root cause. And that's the first step in applying this 4th pillar. And it means that first thing we do is we show people the lifestyle changes they're going to have to make in order to get to the root cause of their chronic health conditions and diseases. And also by way of integrating the first 3 pillars into the 4th. And then, of course, the vibrant health pillar, in addition to those, includes moving from eating fake food to eating real food, metabolic reboots like intermittent water fasting, which is, in my view and experience, the best metabolic reboot on the planet. Examining from the perspective of intracellular nutrition, the most nutrient-dense foods that we can be eating, understanding calorie density, along with, of course, the other standards, restful sleep, exercise. So these are also parts of our 4th pillar of vibrant health with respect to taking steps to apply that pillar. And then we integrate all 4.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like a complete program. I guess that's why it is the ecology. So the root cause, I mean, vibrant health, that's one that's, I think, really a good model in the holistic approach. But you have 3 other areas that you cover as well. So this is very complete. So this really is a holistic approach.
Yes. And what makes it a holistic approach is simply this. It's getting to the root cause. What's the root cause of, for example, our believing that we're just the body, just the mind, just the senses. There's a root cause for that, and that root cause is not having contact with our highest power. What's the root cause of symptoms that continue to come and go seasonally or otherwise throughout our lives? Well, there's a root cause for that embedded in lack of optimal cellular function. So it's always about the root cause, and that's what makes it a holistic approach, the whole. So when I say holistic, it's got a W in front of it, right? Wholeness. Wholeness is what we want. We can attain it. It's our birthright. We were born with it. We've just done things to conceal these things from ourselves. So it's a matter of unlearning these habits that by our power we've used to conceal the very methods, the very power within us that we have to be whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this all sounds great in theory, and I love the concept, but can you give us some examples of how to actually apply each of these pillars?
Well, let me do this. If appropriate, what I'd like to do right now, connected to the first pillar, is to do it'll be under 3 minutes, and it's a simple meditation. Can we do that?
Yeah, if people want to participate.
Okay, so I'm going to ask everyone to gently close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths, breathing in as deeply and as far as you can, slowly and steadily. And then exhaling as far as you can go, slowly and steadily. And now do that a second time. Inhaling slowly and steadily as far as you can go. Exhaling slowly and steadily as far as you can go. You can do that one more time at your own pace. And now you can just breathe normally with your eyes closed while following along with my voice. Right now, if you have any thoughts in your mind, I want you to observe them passively without any reaction or response. For example, you heard me use the word meditation, and now you've got your eyes closed and you're thinking, I should be meditating, and now the thought of pizza flashes in your mind. Don't react by thinking, oh, why am I thinking of pizza when I should be meditating? That's a reaction. Just watch the thought come and go passively, just as if you're lying in a field, looking up at the sky, watching clouds passing by. You know those clouds are eventually going to pass. There's nothing you can do to prevent them from coming and going at the moment, so you just observe them passively. So just observe passively without any reaction, any response, and you can gently, when you start to be distracted, bring your mind back to the sound your breath makes. So just practice this passive observation until you hear my voice again. Very good. So now you can just take a deep, slow, and steady breath in. And then exhale as slowly and steadily as you can. And now you can gently open your eyes. And so now you can just ask yourself, do you feel better now than at the start of this broadcast? Second question you can ask yourself now is, were you able to at least begin to watch your thoughts passively? And if so, did your mind become or start to become quieter as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. When you started talking about pizza, I was on to pizza. I was like, he said pizza. I didn't eat breakfast this morning. I was not taking care of my vibrant health this morning. But I think that's very uncommon for people, just to sit and be still.
Yes.
As the God says, be still.
Yes.
And we don't do that. So that's good, just to practice even something that simple, to pause us, be still. And it doesn't matter. We don't have to fight with ourselves in the right or wrong way to do it.
Right. Yes.
So very good. So that's a great one of just learning how to apply each of these in our life. And I mean, some of the simpler things of the vibrant health section, I'm sure there's simple things you can apply, but do you want to go through all 4 pillars and just give us some tips on how to apply these?
Here's a second tip for second pillar, improved mental state. This is a simple pranayam, which is a breathing method, again, to calm the restless mind, but to focus it within so that the mind can gain more clarity, among other things. And so all you do, and I'm going to demonstrate it here real quick, you close off one nostril. I'm closing off the right nostril. I'm going to inhale through the left. And then I'm going to close off the left nostril, and I'm going to exhale through the right. So you can do that 5 times, inhaling through the left nostril. And people who are watching, if they want to do this as I'm doing it, you can. So you do that 5 times left to right, and then 5 times right to left. That's one cycle. And you want to be sure that after inhalation that you simply stop the breath for as long as you're able to observe that space between the breath. And then after you exhale, you stop the breath again before you inhale. So this is known as Anulom Vilom. It's a very powerful pranayam that has been used for centuries, that we use quite successfully here. So that's just one of many methods that can be employed connected to improved mental state. And so the third pillar, emotional resilience. So emotional resilience must begin with examining the understandings that we embrace that are no longer useful. So we take people through a list exercise. And we create a list. On that list is parents, friends, lovers, husband, wife, popular media, mainstream news, peer pressure from friends and associates, interactions with associates at work or employees, etc. Those are just some of the items on the list. And so we lead people in an exercise where they make that list. And then what I would say to everyone viewing is, you take that list that I just mentioned, you can just start with those, and then you ask yourself, what understandings did I get from my parents, for example, that I still embrace today that are no longer useful for the journey that I want to make? And then what understandings have I and continue to embrace from friends or husband or wife that I've done so without questioning? Many of these understandings we've accepted without questioning. And in the well-being journey, particularly where spiritual growth is concerned, all understandings must be questioned. That's the science. The science is question the understanding. The understanding is a hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start by attempting to disprove the hypothesis. And then if you can't disprove it, then you take steps to attempt to prove that it's actually efficacious. So we have to do that with all of the understandings that we've reached for, many of which we've never questioned, so that we can begin discarding them for better, greater understandings. Like illness, all illness is an invitation to wellness, something one of my mentors taught me. Very difficult to embrace that understanding if you think that a chronic health condition is a punishment or a death sentence. You have to be able to see the joy in contracting the condition to be able to embrace an understandings that's going to help you heal the condition. So we work with lists like this, and that's the first step in applying emotional resilience. And then for vibrant health, I can start with one simple thing that, of course, you're likely to know what I'm going to say. You've got to begin integrating the first three pillars along with first examination is, what are you putting into your mouth? Are you eating fake food, or are you eating real food? So the first step for vibrant health is to examine foods, to examine environmental exposures to toxins and food toxins. Those three must be addressed all the way down to the cellular level. And it begins with, are you eating food that is the most nutritious for your cells? And we know what those foods are. Those are typically plants for the most part. And so intracellular nutrition is where we start with vibrant health. Tests are involved. We help people understand biomarkers on simple blood tests so that they can begin to improve. We have a before and an after in that regard. We do a total well-being challenge in which we lead people through 90 days of this, 60 days with interactive video and live webinars, and then 30 days with private sessions where we help them make these lifestyle changes. And on the level of vibrant health, the first focus is, are you eating real food that is non-toxic, organic, and best for your cells?
Wow, absolutely. And, one of the things I wanted to touch on is when you were saying about being sick as a punishment. The scripture says, count it all as joy. And that's a really hard thing, is when, we look at scripture and they say, hey, take this thorn from my side. But, sometimes in the suffering is where we find the relevance, right? And I always, when I work with clients, I'm always like, don't wait till you're sick to put value on your health. And I think that's where we've come to in our society. We've been medicated, dumbed down, suppressed in our symptoms. So we don't really know the suffering. And so since there's no warning signs anymore because we take medications to repress it, we don't really know we're sick. And it was actually Dr. Sherry Tenpenny who said, symptom-free in the presence of pharmaceuticals is not health. And I think it was a great statement because she's correct. Just because we don't have symptoms doesn't mean that we're not sick. It just means we're repressed. And when we stop listening to those signs and signals from God that something is wrong, which is how we are created, then we can't embrace what he said he left here on the earth for us to utilize. So it's a great analogy to say, like in the suffering, there is joy. Be happy that your body's telling you that you need to do something to transform it. So good stuff. And let's talk about that, because there's been a big, I would say, indoctrination of fear that has been sweeping the nation in the form of a pandemic. And we're not going to get into statistics and numbers because we know what those are. But can you address the coronavirus? Can you spotlight that for us? This new variant that we hear is coming out. And I don't mean to completely shift it to the right and derail you, but I think this is very relevant in what we're talking about as getting to the root, knowing how to be healthy and knowing what our bodies can withstand to really address what is the immune system, because I don't think people realize there's innate and adaptive. And can you just address that for us? Absolutely.
I'm glad you asked the question. It's not a divergence. It's a very important factor. So before I share my screen, I just want to say to everyone, the reason why the plandemic, and I have a research team of 175 doctors I work with that we started 18 months ago here in our school. So we absolutely know it's a plandemic. So in order to make a pandemic work, there has to be fear. Fear, where there is no intelligence. So that's the first thing people need to remember. The more intelligent you become about what a virus is, in this example, the better off you're going to be. And so a virus is an inactive organism that carries genetic material, genetic encoding, and messages for all forms on this earth, including the human body, to take up and decide what adjustments need to be made. In this case, how to upgrade the immune system because something's changed in the environment. So if it's a wild virus, wild viruses occur to have us upgrade our systems through exposure. And again, the virus isn't active until it gets into a cell. It needs a host cell to become active. But if our immune systems are strong and healthy and we're maintaining our health as best as possible, exposure to viruses means that we're getting new epigenetic communication, a genetic encoding that is going to help our immune system protect us from current changes in the environment that often include toxins. So not to undermine the fact that the human body is germs, as in to germinate, as in to give life. Viruses, parasites, amoebas, fungi, bacteria, we need those in our bodies. So there are useful viruses in this example, and there are harmful viruses. And our immune systems, when kept healthy, can discern the difference because, again, there's genetic encoding that we need for the immune system to be upgraded.
Right.
So having said that, let me, and I want to make sure I do this right, and let me just, I know we went through this before.
That's okay.
All right, I think I got it. Can everyone see that?
Yep, there we are.
So everyone needs to understand big pharma's focus on vaccines has actually destroyed the science around the immune system because vaccines are designed to overtake the innate immune system. Until recently, medical science did not recognize the importance of the innate immune system at all. The focus was simply on adaptive immunity. In fact, until recently, a good portion of medical science stated that babies were born without immune systems, which is a ridiculous notion. Of course, we're born with immune systems. But the focus on immunity through synthetic biologics is to downregulate the innate immune system, to have the adaptive immune system take over the innate immune system by way of vaccines, principally, that now we need to continue taking. It's all wrong because the innate immune system is the ruler of the immune system. And the focus should be on strengthening our innate immune systems. There are ways to do that. So here in this screen, you have several items I'll just go through real quick. Every example, neutrophils, monocytes, etc., these are all lymphocytes. They're white blood cells. They're created in our bone marrow. And so the innate immune system is the master of the immune system. When there is an invader in the system, like a virus, like SARS-CoV-2, and by the way, everyone should understand, there's tons of peer-reviewed science around this. If you were exposed to SARS-CoV-1, swine flu, you are immune to SARS-CoV-2. They are almost 80% identical. And so if you had a healthy immune system through SARS-CoV-1 exposure, your immune system did an upgrade and is protecting you against SARS-CoV-2. That's what's supposed to happen. Even if it's man-made, the immune system can do this if you have a strong innate immune system. So in 1996, toll-like receptors were discovered in fruit flies. And then they were discovered in humans 1 year later, and this changed our understanding in science of the immune system. These toll-like receptors recognize foreign invaders by way of pattern recognition, and they are the receptors that determine, does this virus have useful code that we should allow it into the cells for the cells to uptake, or is it completely harmful, meaning that it has to be destroyed before it gets into the cells? Toll-like receptors send a signal with that messaging to neutrophils. Neutrophils then go into action, and they, by way of mast cells and eosinophils and basophils and granulocytes, they trigger monocytes, which are the next line of defense. If the neutrophils decide, hey, this virus needs to be flushed from the system as quickly as possible, Monocytes kick into action. If they can't do the job, they call on macrophages. Macrophages are phagocytic. They actually eat the foreign invader. They chew it up, so to speak, and spit it out and set it up for being eliminated as waste. There are two types of macrophages, M1 and M2. Sometimes you'll see these designated as MH1 and MH2, or MPH1, MPH2. It's the same thing. M1s are responsible for upregulating cytokine storms to create fever in the process of eliminating the virus. This is very, very important to remember, that there must be a limited cytokine storm to create fever. And then the M2 macrophages shut the fever down, shut the cytokine storm down when the job is done. I say that because many people will remember that people with comorbidities, underlying health conditions, contracted SARS-CoV-2, were hospitalized, were put on ventilators, were given medications, all of which downregulate M2 macrophages. So what happened is they had this upregulation of cytokine storms that their immune systems were not able to downregulate, and they died of cytokine storm inflation. M2, completely gone. Vaccines override M2 macrophages. Just hold that thought. Mm-hmm. And so this is the cycle. Then we have dendritic cells, miraculous. They're part of both the innate and the adaptive immune systems. Dendritic cells work with the toll-like receptors to flag, to actually place a tag on the antigen, which is the surface of the pathogen, so that when it comes time to memorize the coding of the virus, the sequencing, the immune system, by way of the dendritic cells, calls in the adaptive immunity, which is primarily B cell secretion. These are the antibodies, but the dendritic cells manage the secretion of the antibodies so that we don't have antibody-dependent enhancement, which is what the vaccines create, which is antibody secretion that's out of control. They're not neutralizing antibodies, and now the antibodies are wreaking havoc on the innate immune system because it's an upregulation that's a storm of antibodies that begins to suppress the immune system overall. So healthy dendritic cells manage the secretion of the B cells and know when to signal to shut that secretion down, which is interfered with when you take a vaccine, by the way. And then we have natural killer cells. Those are T cells. Remember, and please look online, there are many peer-reviewed studies now that state that T cell secretion is the secret to natural herd immunity from SARS-CoV-2 and any variant. T cell secretion. And so with a healthy innate immune system, you have CD8 T cell secretion. Those are the natural killer cells. CD4 T helper cells. They help manage the secretion of antibodies so that you don't get antibody-dependent enhancement, and everything relies on the health of the innate immune system. So that's just a real quick snapshot in the time that we have, and I hope I did that justice.
No, that was great. We've talked a lot about this pandemic, and I'm glad you said that because I'm not cautious, but I'm more of like respectful of where people are and their knowledge. But yes, we have talked about this, and I have to tell you, we were live through the whole thing. We did several live events, and all of us were fine. Like you said, the statistics out there that were being relayed through the indoctrination, through the television, and people were being programmed as they channeled in. They were being brainwashed, and the people that were out in the field, the doctors, the practitioners that we worked with, they knew what to do, and they were seeing the results in the recovery. So I love that you addressed that honestly, and that we can't go around what God has created perfect. And what he had said in Genesis 1:31 is very good. So we can't go around it and think that man can do it better, and we don't have to fear. So what can we do right now to help us strengthen our immune system and just keep it natural and robust? What are some suggestions that you have for our audience to fight against viruses and foreign invaders?
First thing is the fear factor has to be addressed, and you're not going to do that by starting with the fourth pillar. You have to start with the first. We are in a spiritual crisis. The pandemic is a spiritual crisis. It's not a health crisis. It's a spiritual crisis that is now really putting a spotlight, a magnifying glass on the fact that people have lost sight of who they are in their connection to God. And so the very first step, if you want to talk about bolstering the immune system, is you've got to have methods for reconnecting with your divine nature. Must. And you have to engage those methods every day. Do you wake up with your heart singing and dancing with indescribable joy? And are you able to maintain that state throughout your day? And if not, why not? That's the principal question. That's where we have to start. So we have methods for increasing the experience of indescribable joy. There's so much joy here. How can people be frightened? How can they be distracted? How can they be hateful when there's so much joy here just in our existence? Why? Because people cover it up. We conceal it with a restless mind. So we start by addressing the restless mind. You cannot have ongoing strong immunity with a restless mind because of the integral membrane proteins, the receptor proteins that respond to the signals that the mind sends to the brain can shut down cells. So we have to start there. Now, of course, I know what the audience really wants to hear. Give me the pill, Kedarji. What can I take today that's going to make me immune, tomorrow morning?
Where is it? Where's the magic?
Here's the magic. The magic is in the whole. But yes, of course, here are some steps on the level of health. First thing is increase vitamin C intake, D, zinc. All of the major phytonutrients are very important for upregulating T cell secretion. We're talking about vitamin C, D, zinc, iodine, copper, L-lysine, L-proline. Those are the primary ones. Get those into your system. If you can't get enough from foods, use organic supplements or get it intravenously. When the pandemic first started, I decided to go flush out my system with hyperbaric oxygen, and then I did vitamin C, D, and C drip with zinc. So these are things that can be done, but you've got to get more phytonutrients into your system. They upregulate T cell secretion. Look at the foods you're eating. Make sure that you're eating for intracellular nutrition first. Next, get off processed sugar and processed food fragments. This is essential. Every time you increase insulin resistance, which is a metabolic disease, through processed food fragments and processed sugar, you are downregulating your immune system. So get off sugar. That's my message to everyone. You want a strong immune system? You want to be able to protect yourself against the Delta variant and all the others that may be coming that are really your friends? Get off sugar. Be mindful of eating real food instead of fake food. Exercise, intermittent water fasting, at least 24 hours in a week, 48 hours to 72 hours is even better. So these are methods that you could begin with right now that you will see and experience results in 2 weeks with respect to strengthening your immune system. We were open throughout the entire pandemic. We did not mask up. We didn't have any requirements. We had health department complaints against us. We told them, bring it on. You better have a warrant. So they never came because they couldn't get a warrant.
Right.
And
what were they getting a warrant for? That was the whole thing.
Exactly.
You know?
And we had people who contracted SARS-CoV-2 in our community here in under a week with what I just shared with people, the all gone, symptoms gone. They've been retested. They don't have any kind of infection now. So you can do it. It doesn't take much. Listen, please listen. Go with God. You'll have the intelligence then. You'll be led to the methods, many of which I've just described, for what you need to do. Trust in God, be educated, be intelligent, and don't be frightened.
Amen. That's a great summation. Amen.
Amen indeed.
That's right. I mean, it's all about having enough, right? Having enough faith and having enough foundational health.
You got it.
And that's where it all begins. So I really appreciate you being here. Can you let our audience know how to contact you to participate in your retreats or your school? How can they find you?
It's Bhakta School. That's BHAKTA School, one word, BHAKTA School.org. And so right there on the homepage, there's plenty of information about our various curriculums and our schedule of programs and events, both online and off, more information about myself and my staff. And having said that, I want everyone to know then that probably mid-September, that bhaktaschool.org website is going to turn into holisticlivingnetwork.org. And the corresponding platform will be holisticlivingnetwork.com.
Okay, I think I saw that already when I was looking.
But go to bhaktaschool.org. That's where everyone can start to get more information.
Okay, and your transformation, I looked at some of your pictures, and that was amazing from where you came from. So yeah, very good. So we're going to link that school link in the comments. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out to Kedarji directly. His staff is amazing. They will help you. They will get you where you need to be. And I just thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and your passion with us. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a joy to be here.
Thank you. All right, guys, stay tuned because Joe Messino is up next, and he's going to talk about no vitamin D. Say what? Joe, you better be able to back that up. We'll be right back at noon, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in.